Christmas morning 2024. The Gulf of Finland, an aging oil tanker called the Eagle S, is steaming along a road it has sailed before. Except this time something is hanging off the bottom of the ship. Its anchor is down. And according to Finnish investigators, that anchor was dragged across the seabed for nearly 100 kilometers, tearing through the Estlink 2 power cable that connects Finland to Estonia, along with 4 data cables carrying internet traffic between NATO countries. Finland did not send a diplomatic note. Finnish special forces rappelled onto the deck of the moving tanker from a helicopter and seized the ship. The crew claimed it was an accident. Western intelligence agencies assessed the Eagle S as part of Russia's shadow fleet, a swarm of old tankers with hidden ownership that Moscow reportedly uses to dodge sanctions and, increasingly, to drag anchors across things NATO cannot afford to lose. That tanker operated for hours over critical infrastructure in one of the most heavily monitored bodies of water on Earth, and the first anyone knew about the damage was when the lights flickered in Estonia. Nobody was underneath, watching. That gap in the map is about to close, because on June 29, 2026, in the Polish port city of Gdynia, 2 prime ministers stood side by side as their government sealed a $4.8 billion contract for a machine designed to sit in the dark under ships like the Eagle S, silent for weeks at a time, recording everything. Sweden's A26, 66 meters long, under 2,000 tons, a crew of roughly 24, and built to vanish beneath the surface for close to a month at a stretch. Russia's navy now has to assume it could be anywhere. Since late 2023, at least 11 cables and pipelines in the Baltic have been damaged in incidents that investigators describe as suspicious. The Baltic Connector gas pipeline, the Sea Lion 1 data cable between Finland and Germany, power links, telecom lines, the plumbing of an entire region cut one strand at a time, always by a passing ship, always deniable. The Baltic seabed carries the internet traffic, the electricity interconnects, and a good chunk of the energy supply for 8 NATO countries. You do not need to invade Estonia if you can unplug it. And this is the problem with fighting a seabed war from the surface. NATO responded in January 2025 with Operation Baltic Sentry, putting frigates and patrol aircraft over the choke points. Useful, but a frigate announces itself from 50 kilometers away. A saboteur simply waits for it to leave. What you actually need is something the saboteur can never confirm is gone, something that might be under the hull right now. Sweden spent the last decade building exactly that, and until this summer, almost nobody outside defense circles was paying attention. Understand the country before you understand the boat. Sweden has produced exactly one loud export in its modern history, and his name is Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Everything else the nation engineers is aggressively, almost pathologically quiet. This is a country that spent the Cold War carving entire air bases into the sides of mountains, hiding coastal artillery inside cliffs, and telling absolutely no one. That instinct produced a moment the US Navy still does not enjoy discussing. In 2005, during exercises off the American coast, Sweden's diesel-electric Gotland-class submarine reportedly slipped inside the defensive screen of the USS Ronald Reagan carrier group and scored simulated kills on a $6 billion nuclear supercarrier. More than once, the Americans were so rattled they leased the Swedish boat and its crew for 2 years just to figure out how it kept happening. The A26 Blekinge-class is what Sweden built after learning everything that experience taught them. Saab calls the design philosophy Ghost, genuine holistic stealth, which sounds like marketing until you see what it means in practice. Every engine sits on vibration-absorbing mounts. Every pipe is isolated from the hull. The hull itself is shaped to kill hydrodynamic noise, and the machinery is physically decoupled from the frame so that sound has nowhere to travel. Naval analysts assess it as having one of the lowest acoustic signatures of any conventional submarine ever designed. Then there is the endurance trick. A Stirling air-independent propulsion system lets the A26 stay submerged for 18 to 25 days without surfacing. No snorkel breaking the waves, nothing for a satellite or a maritime patrol aircraft to find. For nearly a month, the boat simply does not exist. None of that would matter as much in the open Atlantic. In the Baltic, it is lethal because the Baltic itself is a nightmare for everyone else. The average depth is around 55 meters. In places, you could stand a large building on the seabed and its roof would breach the surface. Fresh river water sits on top of salt water in unstable layers that bend sonar like a funhouse mirror, and the bottom is littered with an estimated 100,000 shipwrecks from 7 centuries of wars, every one of them a metal object that lights up a sonar screen and means nothing. Shallow water adds one more danger most navies never train for. An underwater explosion in 50 meters of water has nowhere to dissipate, so the shockwave reflects off the bottom and the surface and hits the hull twice. The A26 was built for that math, with reinforced shock-resistant sections designed by the Swedish Defense Materiel Administration to take a near miss in water where a bigger boat would be cracked open like an egg. Russia's nuclear submarines were built for the deep ocean. Sending one into the Baltic is like taking a semi-truck into a parking garage. It fits technically, but everyone can hear it coming and it cannot turn around. Sweden's boats were born in this garage. Swedish crews have spent 60 years memorizing the thermal layers, the wreck fields, and the acoustic dead zones the way a cab driver memorizes back streets. The A26 was not adapted for the Baltic. It was designed for nothing else. Built into the bow of the A26 is a flooded chamber called the multi-mission portal, a payload tube roughly 6 meters long and wide enough for a diver to swim through in full gear. Combat divers exit while the boat sits on the bottom. Unmanned underwater vehicles launch through it, crawl along a pipeline, inspect a cable, plant a sensor, and come home, all while the submarine never moves. Poland's defense minister, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, put it bluntly at the signing ceremony. These boats will deploy swarms of drones controlled from inside the submarine, and their job includes protecting the security architecture of the Baltic seabed. Now think back to Christmas 2024. The Eagle-S dragged its anchor for 100 kilometers because nothing in the seabed could see it happen. An A26 parked near a cable junction changes that permanently. The drone films the hull number. The sensors record the anchor hitting the bottom. And the saboteur's entire legal defense that it was all a tragic accident dies in high definition. The portal is the headline, but the boat still carries teeth. 4 torpedo tubes feed Saab's new Torpedo 62 heavyweights, weapons built to navigate the Baltic's acoustic chaos and kill a warship from ranges the target never gets to argue with. Saab's own literature goes further, advertising the option to fit submarine-launched cruise missiles for land targets. And Polish reporting suggests Warsaw has been discussing weapons reaching out to roughly 1,000 kilometers. From a boat nobody can find, that is not a naval capability anymore. That is a hole in Kaliningrad's entire defensive plan. Which brings us back to Gdynia, June 29th. Poland did not just admire the A26. Poland bought 3 of them, beating out an absolute bloodbath of a competition. Germany's ThyssenKrupp, South Korea's Hanwha Ocean, Italy's Fincantieri, France's Naval Group, some of the biggest submarine builders on Earth, all lost to Sweden. The scale of the Polish upgrade is hard to overstate. Right now, the entire Polish submarine force is one boat, the ORP Orzeł, a Soviet-built Kilo-class commissioned in 1986. It is older than most of the sailors serving on it, and its spare parts catalog is written in the language of the country it would be fighting. Poland is jumping from that directly to what Saab markets as the world's first 5th-generation submarine. The The deal comes with a bridge. Around August 2026, Polish crews begin training in Sweden under the Royal Swedish Navy, and in 2027, they take over the leased Swedish submarine HMS Suderman land to keep real underwater skills alive until the new boats arrive. Sweden is also investing roughly 100 million euros into Polish industry, with Saab and Polish defense giant PGZ standing up maintenance facilities in-country. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson called it a deal that will make the Polish Navy one of the strongest in NATO, and for once, that is not a politician rounding up. This is, remember, the same Kristersson who caused a small national scandal by admitting he asks ChatGPT for a second opinion on the job. Whatever the chatbot told him about submarines, it apparently worked, because Saab's chief executive Mikael Johansson walked out of Gdynia with one of the largest orders in Saab's history. The two governments even wrapped the whole thing in a new alliance framework they named the Baltic Sea Pact. And unlike most famous Swedish exports, these arrive fully assembled. No hex key, no diagram with a confused cartoon man, no leftover screws that were probably important. This story has a wound in the middle of it, and pretending otherwise would insult you. Sweden ordered its own two A26 boats, HMS Blekinge and HMS Skåne, back in 2015. 11 years later, neither has touched water. The program's cost has roughly doubled from the original estimates. Delivery has slipped to the 2030s, and Poland's first boat is not scheduled to arrive until 2031, with the last one in 2038. Meanwhile, the anchor dragging is happening this year. That mismatch is real, and no press release makes it disappear. But the timeline has a counterweight. The Södermanland land lease puts a modernized, upgraded Swedish boat under a Polish flag as early as next year. In 2025, Sweden also relaunched HMS Holland, packed with a 26 technology and assessed by Swedish defense authorities as one of the quietest submarines operating anywhere in Northern Europe. The Ghost fleet does not appear all at once in 2031. Pieces of it are already in the water, and Poland's order finally gives Saab's Karlskrona shipyard the production scale a two-boat program never had, which is exactly the medicine an 11-year delay needs. Pull the camera back and look at the map the way an admiral in St. Petersburg has to. Since Finland and Sweden joined NATO, the alliance owns almost the entire Baltic coastline. Russia is left with two slivers, the pocket around St. Petersburg and the fortress exclave of Kaliningrad, home to its Baltic fleet. Every ship leaving either one has to run a gauntlet that starts under Finnish waters in the north, passes the Swedish island bastion of Gotland at the center, brushes the Polish coast in the south, and ends at the Danish Straits, the only door out to the Atlantic. Soon, identical Swedish-designed submarines will be operating from both the northern and southern shores of that gauntlet, run by crews trained in the same doctrine, sharing the same NATO targeting picture, in the one sea on Earth where these boats hold every home field advantage. And these boats do more than shoot. Inside NATO's new maritime headquarters structure, a submarine like the A26 works as the forward sensor of the whole network, sitting where no aircraft can loiter and no frigate can hide, quietly queuing the Baltic Sentry patrols above it. The P-8 that shows up over a suspicious tanker did not get lucky. It got a phone call from 60 meters down. The Baltic fleet does not need to be sunk. It needs to understand that on day one of any conflict, every one of its harbors is being watched from below by something it has never once managed to track, and every sortie is a coin flip. That is what deterrence actually looks like, not a parade, a silence you cannot interpret. So run the Eagle-S scenario one more time, a few years forward. Another tired tanker with a shell company owner slows down over a cable junction south of Gotland. The captain checks the radar. Empty sea, no frigates, no aircraft. He gives the order to drop anchor. 400 meters away, a drone the size of a torpedo has been filming his hull for the last hour. It was launched from a submarine that has been sitting on the bottom for 19 days, crewed by people whose national pastime is being unbothered, and whose government now shares every frame with Warsaw, Helsinki, and Brussels in real time. The captain will never know the boat was there. That is the entire point. Sweden spent 200 years perfecting the art of being underestimated, and it has now sold that art to its neighbors at $4.8 billion a signature. Russia turned the Baltic seabed into a battlefield while nobody was watching. Sweden's answer was simple: someone is watching now. You just will never hear them.